My family abandoned me because my sister blamed me for her divorce. Years later, I get an email out of nowhere explaining me everything with proof, so I ruined her life with it. Almost 7 years ago, my family cut me out of their lives and kicked me out of the house. I, 29 male, was 22 at the time and wasn't financially stable enough to rent an apartment on my own, and what had happened was so sudden that I'd had no time to prepare myself for it at all, mentally or financially. The reason behind all of this was my sister. My sister Hannah, 37 female, and I've never been close because of the significant age gap between us. She got married to her boyfriend Pete, 39 male, of 3 years when she was 27, and they were married for 3 years. They got divorced 3 years into their marriage because Hannah had accused Pete of having an affair with one of my friends. I've been living with my parents after college since I just started working, and I wanted to save some money before I moved out. My parents were okay with that arrangement as well, but that was only until my sister announced her divorce. She just came back home one day, crying hysterically, and announced that she'd filed for divorce because her husband had been cheating on her for 6 months now. And then she went on to throw me under the bus for introducing my friend to him. My friend, Emily, 28 female, was trying to gain weight, and since Pete was a certified dietitian, he agreed to help her out. I had been the one to introduce her to him, and apparently, she was the one Pete had been cheating on my sister with. I was shocked that this was happening because even though Emily and I weren't close, I knew for a fact that she was a good woman and would never get with a married man. Besides, cheating was so out of character for Pete as well. He was totally smitten with Hannah and only ever had good things to say about her, so I found it incredibly hard to believe that he cheated on her. I had my doubts, but my parents believed her instantly and didn't even question anything in spite of the fact that she never had any proof of him cheating. They just took a word for it, but I'm not going to hold that against them since they would choose their own daughter over their son-in-law, regardless of who was right. What I didn't understand was why they readily kicked me out just because Hannah said so. She just stormed in one day, threw a tantrum, and somehow convinced my parents to throw me out simply because I'd been the one to introduce Emily to Pete. She accused me of ruining her marriage, and my parents agreed with her. For some reason, I was devastated and tried to stop my parents, but they weren't ready to listen to me at all and told me that if I didn't leave them, they'd forcefully kick me out. In just one day, I'd lost my family and my home and had absolutely no idea where to go. I was literally sobbing out on the sidewalk with all my stuff for an hour or so before I was able to pull myself together and went to a friend's house for the night. I tried contacting them every single day for the next few days, but didn't have any luck. My friend was kind enough to let me live at his place until I was able to find an apartment for myself. Unfortunately, my parents had pretty much made up their minds that I was in the wrong here, and I was the one responsible for the divorce. My mom and dad had actually told me that they were disgusted by what I'd done before kicking me out, which didn't even make sense because it wasn't as if I'd been the one who Pete cheated with. They'd blocked my number so I couldn't get through to them at all, and when I tried to visit them, my mom threatened to call the cops on me if I didn't leave. So after that, I finally realized that they were serious about this and actually did blame me for whatever had happened. I don't think I had any reason to be surprised since my sister always had been the favorite child. My parents had never really planned for a second child, so I ended up always getting sidelined, and while I didn't care much for it growing up, I didn't know that it would lead to something so huge. Thinking about it now, I guess I should have seen it coming, but honestly, I don't think anyone in my place could have seen something like this coming. Anyway, I even tried to figure out things for myself to make sense of it all for the next couple of weeks, since Hannah and my parents had practically cut me off altogether, and I had no way to get to them. I couldn't speak to Pete either because he blocked me too, which didn't make any sense to me. I couldn't find him either because both Hannah and Pete had vacated the house they used to live in and had left to live with their respective parents instead. So I had no way to get through to anyone involved, which is why I approached my last resort to get to the truth, Emily. Like I said, Emily and I weren't really close, but I had to do what I had to do. So I just asked to meet her one day and explain the situation to her. I asked her if what Hannah had said about the affair was true, and she denied it vehemently, and I believed her, to be honest. Emily told me that she'd only ever met Pete a few times, and only in a professional capacity, so there was absolutely nothing going on between them, and she had no idea why Hannah would say something so awful about her. She even told me that she'd had a steady boyfriend for a couple of years already, and was planning to get hitched in a few months too. She even showed me pictures, and what she'd told me was way more convincing than whatever Hannah had said. I had no proof, but I just knew somehow that Hannah had been lying about the real reason for the divorce. But since I had no proof, I couldn't go back to my family family, and I most certainly couldn't go back without it. Back then, I was pretty desperate to go back to living with my family since I really missed them, despite what they'd done to me. With time, however, I was able to get over it and move on with my life. I managed to find a place and made my job the purpose of my life so that I'd have something to distract myself with. And I also had to pay the bills, so it was a better way of coping than just sitting around and being depressed. Since I didn't have any other option, I was hurting a lot, but I knew I had to go on somehow, with or without my family's support. Years passed, and now I'm doing much better in life. I've moved from my tiny apartment to a much bigger one and even got engaged to my girlfriend of 2 years around a week ago. And our engagement post is what ended up being a game changer for me, because just a few days after that post, I received an email out of literally nowhere that not only explained the entire story of Hannah's divorce to me and gave me all the answers I needed, but also had proof attached. My fiancée, Liza, 30 female, usually only posted us on Instagram, but the picture from our engagement made it to her Facebook feed as well, where she had a wider audience. It was a public post as well, and a lot of people saw it, including my ex-brother-in-law, Pete. He happened to be someone my fiancée had met at a seminar a few years back since she was a doctor, and had ended up adding him on Facebook, which is how he found me. It really is a small world, and for the first time, I was glad about it.